just being one of a few Black female soccer coaches in the Division I level. I'm hoping that there's a little Marsha, who's like, hey, oh, she looks like me. I can maybe do what she's doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, thanks for tuning into part 3 of my conversation with Marsha Harper, the American University women's soccer head coach. Now, I'm sure you've enjoyed our conversation so far. She is such a cool person and has a really cool perspective on life. So I think you're really going to enjoy this last part. So I mentioned this at the beginning, but Marsha is making history as the 4th Black female head coach in all of women's Division I soccer. Over 300 programs there. So she's also the first Black head coach at American University in over 15 years. So really paving the way in her role. But she shares about the amazing things that her team has been doing off of the field during 2020 when so much has been happening in our country. And she talks about the initiatives that her team has started in terms of joining the fight against racism and promoting social justice within their community and across the country. She talks about how this was all led by her players, and she's so proud to be part of such a powerful group of women, and she just loves the opportunity to be their coach. And she's such a humble leader where she's like, I just want to be here to guide them in the right direction and just be here to give them a platform and support. So lastly, she leaves us with some really important advice on how to stay positive even when life throws some crazy stuff your way, when you feel like you're off track. Marsha has got a really inspiring way to stay positive. So I'm excited for you to hear the rest of our conversation. So here is Marsha. You touched on some of the things that you're having the team do, outside of soccer, because there's not a whole lot you can do on the pitch right now being the pandemic, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the the initiatives that the team has been a part of, especially during the summer in terms of, joining the social justice issues. And, can you talk about especially the photo campaign? Describe what that was that your team led. There's so many cool things that you guys did, but I do want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit earlier, but this summer was, of course, really eye-opening for everyone. Unfortunately, there was a series of events that happened that made it on every screen, so everyone had to see it. Because of that, even if this hadn't happened, I knew that I inherited a strong group of women who are very passionate, very intelligent, but just kind of needed a microphone, like your fancy microphone.
Yeah,
right?
Just drop a couple hundred bucks. Just kidding.
But yeah, they just needed to know how and if it was okay to use their platform. And so a lot of what our team did surrounding social injustice and even some of the, other causes like Hispanic Heritage Month, like all these things, Mental Health Month, all these things, they're player led. Pretty much every campaign that you saw, at least coming from our page, was the girls' idea. We just okay, this is your idea, and we challenge them to structure it a little bit, right? And okay, what's the content look like? What's your target audience? Like, how often are you gonna do it? Like, that's what we were helping with, but they ran with it. Their idea was their idea.
Yeah.
The photo campaign that we had actually went athletic department wide, started with our team. One of our players suggested some of our Black student athletes holding up a sign that said, "Do you hear me?" or "Do you hear me now?" Right? And then all of the other members of our community saying, like, "I got your back, I hear you," whatever it was. But that started with our players just saying, like, "Hey, coach, can we do this? I feel really strongly about this. I want people to know where we stand. I want people to know what we're about and that we are going to use our voice. Are we able to do this?" I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
How can I help? Right. And so, it was awesome to also have the support of the rest of the athletic department to be like, yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's get everyone on board to do it. And so, yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
Wow.
But everything that you saw from us was player led, which is
that's awesome.
Awesome. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have to ask them like, hey, this is my idea. What do you guys think? It was like, I literally, every week we have our announcements. And at the end, I'm saying, I give them time. I'm like, hey, do you guys have anything we want to talk about or any issues that you want to bring up? Right? Do we want to speak about? Do we want to promote? And of course, not every week they have something, but they might be like, yeah, next month is this. Like, can we do something? Yeah.
That's
great.
awesome.
And so I'm just here to help, just like on the field. I'm a soccer coach. Like, that's my title. But on the field, we're giving them, ideas. But when the whistle blows, it's so fluid that you have to be thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's our game plan. Here's a platform to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Now execute. And so it's the same thing in the real world, like you're talking about, you alluded to, like taking that from the field, what you've learned, and how can we apply it in real life. And they absolutely have done it. And, it was for an awesome cause, obviously, where, they opened a lot of people's eyes, and some of their peers, they even empowered. We had, especially around the racism and social injustice, especially when it's always been happening, unfortunately, but when it was at its peak this summer, it was also about using our platform and like talking about where we stand, but also like being educational, right? Mm-hmm. There was players on our team that like, hey, I've got a question.
Yeah.
And again, our team is so close that it was easy. I'm talking with some of my colleagues, they're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how to bring it up. Like there's this unease on our team, like, just people aren't comfortable around it. But our players were like, hey coach, two of my players, hey coach, can we take the next meeting? I'm like, well, what do you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, just double check here.
Yeah. They told me, and I'm like, okay, great. And then they were like, we also want to answer some questions that our teammates had. So they submitted a Google survey, anonymous Google survey, sent it out to the girls, their team. They could ask whatever question, and then they got those answers, and then like set up a little PowerPoint and answered questions. So then it was like this space where you could be completely vulnerable.
Wow.
Right? Even more so than they already are. And then they were just like getting the answers. And then even within that, they'd be like, any questions? And then that would, open the door for people to be like, yeah, I've experienced the same thing. Or like, I haven't experienced this, but like, I'm so thankful that you're bringing it up. And like, maybe I have done these things I didn't realize, and all these things. Right. So the women that I work with are so intelligent. They just literally need a platform, and they just need a little bit of structure and someone to like, force them to think about things from a different angle. But they are so intelligent. And I've said it before, I've been quoted to say, like, a lot of people lead from the front, but especially with these issues, I'm like leading from the back. Like, I'm, there, right? My job.
I'll hold you up.
Yeah, like, all right, you're straight off the path. Okay. But they were charging this summer in until this point as well. And they still do. They still come up with these ideas, but it's all player led.
Cool. That's amazing. So, and I mean, and we have to mention, like, what did that mean to you? You came into the American University athletic department as the first African-American head coach in over 15 years, seeing the open conversations that your team was having and you being in the position that you are. Like, what were some of the thoughts going through your head in terms of, your perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's always, and especially when we were talking about the social injustice that was happening, we would have our team calls, not every call the players led. I certainly led some discussions and shared like my own personal anecdotes of my experience and growing up, what it was like being a young Black girl in Colorado, predominantly white neighborhood, definitely predominantly white school that I went to from 6th to 12th grade, affluent school as well. So like what my experiences were like, kind of like assimilating to that environment, right? And like navigating and like making sure I fit in certain ways, and how I had to box that up, but being open about it, because some people, I mean, shouldn't say never, but I haven't, up until that point, I hadn't openly talked about my experience. And so I think it was certainly helpful for other people, especially those who are not Black, to learn and hear from people that they're close to, the emotional effects that it has on a lot of people, or had on a lot of people. And so, there's always been, for me, like I always have just been uniquely in an environment where I am the only Black woman or person, right? And so, but again, how I was raised by my mom, right, was like, this is your circumstance.
Yeah.
Now what? Like, are you like, so what, you're Black? Like, what does that mean? Nothing. Like, go and get it, right? So, so that's how I've gone about my life. And it just so happens that where I grew up and where the school that I went to, I was surrounded by predominantly white people, and I had to assimilate, which is good to an extent, because I was able to be a connector of people in that way too. And so I think that certainly helped me in the moment where we were a couple of months ago, in connecting two sides of the spectrum, right? Like, I mean, frankly, white people and Black people, right? And connecting both parties in that way, and giving perspective and helping to understand, giving terms and definitions, and asking challenging questions and sharing stories, and having discussions. It was certainly nothing that I was expecting, but also the way that I've been raised is, be open and comfortable to talk and talk about your experience, but also don't be ashamed about who you are either. And so I think it was an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, but I felt comfortable sharing, and I felt like I had the space to do that, especially given the women on my team.
Yeah.
Right. They had already shared their feelings about it. And so we knew within our little bubble, in our little family's pocket, we're like kind of where we could go with it. And so, they're vulnerable with me, and I opened up and was vulnerable with them about my experiences. Right. And so I think it really helped. And then the rest of the athletic department, we had, different discussions where I would invite members of our athletic department to our team discussion.
Nice. Yeah.
And I mean, being, one of the only African-American coaches in soccer, the Division I level is certainly unique, but I guess I don't necessarily realize it all the time. I definitely realize it in moments, but I think it's just a strength, to be honest. I stand out.
Yeah.
So, quite literally. Yeah. So, no, I think it's something that I'm certainly proud of. I think, growing up when I was, 12-year-old Marsha, right, just playing soccer. And then when I started to really realize that soccer, I might be good at this, and can I make it a profession, whatever. There weren't a whole lot of Black players for me to look at. There was Brianna Scurry, who's a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Right. But there weren't a whole lot of other women that looked like her that were visible. There were certainly some that played, but they weren't overly visible, and that, the Instagram wasn't a thing, Facebook, right?
Yeah.
All these things weren't a thing. But nothing that was overly visible. To be honest, the one woman that I saw that looked like me was Serena Williams. Right? And she played a different sport, but I still
the GOAT.
Still the GOAT. And I still watch her, and learned a lot from her, just seeing her play in the environment, predominantly white environment that she was in, right? How she handled herself, but still executed, and all these things.
Yeah.
So I know that about myself, and where I am, certainly at a predominantly white institution. And also just being one of a few Black female soccer coaches in the Division I level. I'm hoping that there's a little Marsha, who's like, hey, she looks like me. I can maybe do what she's doing. You know what I mean? And so I think a big part about what I have tried to do over these last several months is, hopefully my team knows certainly that I'm available to them, but also anyone in the community, especially Black students and Black people around me that might not, especially being in a predominantly white environment, not feel comfortable maybe to go up to a professor or someone that doesn't look like them, for whatever reason. And so that's been a big reason why I've tried to be so visible and vocal, is to let other people know around me. And it doesn't obviously have to be a student, but obviously I work for university, that I'm here as a resource, right? And that there is a community, a bigger community than maybe what's visible.
I mean, you kind of read my mind there, and I was going to ask you just about, you said that you had just a select few role models that you felt like looked like you, and those were visible to, like, people that were visible to you. And now, do you feel like you're in that role model position to someone else? I know you talked about, hopefully there's a little Marsha out there, and I am sure that there is, but how does that change the way you coach, you lead, you carry yourself, having that idea in your head that you are setting, you're paving this way for other little Marshas behind you?
Yeah. It's funny you say that. There's actually, what's been really cool, because social media is now a thing, right?
Oh yeah.
There's been, especially Black little girls, there's been a handful of Black little girls who have added me, who are soccer players, who will like tag me on their like dribbling drills, and they're like 7 to 11 maybe, right? And I don't know them, and they live in different states, but for whatever reason they've seen me and they've tagged me, and I'm like, that's awesome, right? I'll definitely keep an eye.
Recruit, 2030.
Yeah. But it's just cool. Like that lets me know that obviously there's little eyes on me, right? Obviously I hope that, the little Marshas, the little Black girls are able to see someone that looks like them. But just in general, in my role as a coach to the women on my program, Black, white, purple, yellow, whatever,
Yeah.
right? How I carry myself is certainly, I know that they're watching and I know that I represent them, more importantly. And so I certainly carry myself with them in mind in everything that I do. I also, it changes how I coach them because of the connection that I want with them, the connection that I want, obviously in the soccer field, but I want, like, when a recruit commits to us, we just told a recruit this the other day, like, all right, yeah, we're so excited that you committed, but this is a lifelong commitment. Like, we're going to be in your life forever.
Yeah.
Right. And so
get used to this phase.
Yeah. But I truly mean it. And I truly want that to be the case. And so, I want them to know that I love them. And I'll let them know, but I will also let them know that there is a standard and I expect them to excel in everything that they do.
Yeah.
I love you, but I'm going to push you. Yeah. Right. And that's tough love. But that's kind of, I would say my coaching approach is having high standards. But before I do that, establishing a relationship with every player, every coach, every colleague, I'm around, so that they know that there's an environment and it's more than just whatever the job is or task at hand.
Yeah.
Like, you're a human first, you're a person first. Let's have this connection. And hopefully it's a deep one. Right. So then, especially with my players and my staff, so that if I need to push you or if we need to have a critical conversation one way or the other, we know that it's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's so important, because I think, like, ultimately the end goal isn't about soccer. It's about those relationships, and those are the things that you carry on, like you said, throughout your life for the rest of your life. And those are the things I miss the most about playing, are the relationships, or the locker room dance parties and gatherings. Like, those are my memories. Of course, I don't have, like, the best memories on the field, that's another story. But still, I mean, those are the things you take away, and those are the relationships that you carry on. And so I think I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing with the team. I love all the different things you're doing off the field, like professional development, getting involved in social justice issues, all the things. It's just really cool. It's really important. So we will finish it off for, talk about your goals for 2021. I know everyone's like, 2020 is the year, but, like, okay, let's move. Looking forward even more, 2021. Hopefully things start to clear up. I mean, who knows? But right now, what are some of your hopes, your goals?
For the team, there's so many.
Oh gosh, there we go.
I guess I hope to see progress. Right, every day I told them, and I tell them, I want you to give 100% of whatever your percent is on the day. So it could be a bad day and you could be at like 60%, you got 3 hours of sleep, whatever that is. But for this 2-hour time that we're together, can you give me 100% of that 60? And then, I hope that it helps you bring that 60 maybe to 70. You leave us. But I just want them to see that every time that we go out and do something, whether it's the simplest passing drill or a warm up, I don't know, I don't care. Whatever it is, like, let's be excellent and, like, really intentionally try, and, as corny as it sounds, try and be better than whatever rep that you just did, or whatever, tomorrow's a new day. Can we be better than yesterday? Right? Like, whatever that is, can you be better? And not just like, all right, this is the warm up, let me trot and do this. And, this is a passing drill, let me do this and move over there. It's like, no, like, bah! And then I'm there. And then I'll be like, hey, Sally, I beat you to that cone, right? Like, I'm gonna let everybody know that I did well.
Yeah.
Right? And so my goal is for them to have progress in every single thing that they do every single day. And that's a mentality. And so to that point, we're absolutely attacking the mentality. We're working on the tactical, the technical, and of course the physical, but 100% the mental aspect of our team and our program and the women on our program is what we're diving into. And it's also what we're recruiting. And so I think my goal for 2021 is to have the women on the team progress in general, but certainly in their mentality.
Okay, then I do have one last question. Okay. I think is a good way, to get your perspective on this. I think this is, again, circling back to the point of this podcast, what is your advice to someone who, you know, thought that their life was going one way, and then either an injury hit, a pandemic hit, and all of a sudden their life is on another direction, or is just at a standstill and they don't know where to go? Like, what is your advice for someone going through something like that?
I think to realize that regardless of what happens, the sun will rise tomorrow. As cheesy as that sounds.
That's true.
Right? But it's true. Like, literally, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. There's going to be light tomorrow. There's light in everything. And your perspective is the most powerful tool that any human can have, and for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And so if you can see and acknowledge those moments, like acknowledge what's happening, acknowledge, like, I think it's really important to acknowledge like the negative, because we can build upon that. But if we don't, there's a Lil Wayne quote. I think it said,
it's in that poetry book, right?
Yeah. Working with the negatives can make for a better picture. Right? And he's talking literally about the negatives, the old school photos.
Yeah.
Negatives. So that makes for a better picture, like a unique picture. But I think I am people would probably call me as a positive person. I certainly have my moments. But I think what makes me different than a lot of people, and to what you're talking about, like people who are like hitting a low, you're at that low, acknowledge it, but you can't stay there for long. And that's I think a strength of mine, is like, okay, and I'm bouncing and I'm back up, right? It's like, darn it.
Maybe going even higher. You're going back up even higher.
So, I think and for people who are, you know, feeling like whatever their path was derailed, I think acknowledge it, sit with it, but don't sit long. You sit with it, but you're about to sit on a hot plate, so you got to pop up, you know? Can't sit there for long.
That hot plate is
acknowledge it, know that it's there, but it's heat. That's heat that you're feeling. So like, let's go.
Yeah.
I think perspective is so powerful. I think a lot of people, you know, woe is me type thing, but like, if we have the perspective of like, sun's going to rise tomorrow, also other people are going to get up and rise, like, sun's going to shine. So, sun's going to shine and rise. So shall I think that was a quote.
I mean, anyway. You said it. Sounds like your quote. Sounds good to me.
No, that was an Instagram quote that I saw, but I loved.
That's beautiful.
So, that's my advice.
I appreciate that personal advice, because I just solely asked for myself selfishly. We're not even recording. Podcast is over.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm inspired. I'm motivated.
Oh,
I'm going to do my next 2 push-ups I do every afternoon now. Then I'm a washed-up athlete. My second one's going to be a better rep than the first.
Yeah. And then can we add?
Yeah. Oh, okay. 2 push-ups maybe. Well, I think I've taken enough of your time this afternoon, but thank you so much for sharing all of your inspiring wisdom and your experiences. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from your story and your positivity that is just beaming. So I really appreciate it. Dang, Marsha leaving us with the mic drop, Lil Wayne Instagram quote that we all needed right now in this time in our world. So I could have talked to Marsha for hours. She has such an amazing story, and she has the qualities of a coach that I think every player wants. A coach who wants to be there for you as a mentor and support you in what you're going through in life outside of your sport. And Marsha clearly has that mentality, and she just loves her players so much and obviously just wants to see them grow and be successful on and off the field. So I wish I had a few years of eligibility left. I would love to go play for her, but I still am so appreciative of her perspective and her advice. I'm certainly taking it, and I hope you guys took a lot from it too. So thank you all so much for tuning in to my episode with Marsha Harper, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week.